Hi, I'm Ken Fletcher from Ken Fletcher Woodturning. You've purchased one of my 8-inch segmented bowl kits, and I appreciate that. And I've made this little video, nothing high-tech, but it should be pretty informative, on exactly how to put one of those together. And I'm going to give you a couple of ideas on different aspects of it, so that depending on what tools or machinery or other things that you have, that you can put this bowl together here. Hopefully this will give you enough information to do that. I think it will. To start out with, your kit came in a plastic bag like this. Just dump all the pieces out and put them into 4 piles. You're going to have one that's a green pile. I don't know if you can see those colors or not. I've got one that's a green pile, a red pile, a black pile, and a blue pile. Just in case you can't tell what the colors are, because sometimes blue on mahogany shows up black, or blue on the walnut might show up black. So let me show you that if the pieces are all put together side by side, you can see that they are in fact different heights, and that's for the different sizes of rings. This is going to be the smallest ring with the smallest segments. This will be the largest ring with the largest segments. So if you can't tell for sure what color it is, just put them side by side. You'll be able to figure it out from there. All right, well, let's put a ring together, and I'll show you how I do that and give you some information on some shortcuts I've learned over the years. Oh, be sure you, there should be 16 pieces in each of your piles right there. So 16 segments in each ring. I'm going to do the green one right here. As you stack all of your pieces down, you can see that there's a squiggly green line on the top of all of these. That green line needs to go up. It's very important. That green line is up. And you will also see on the segments, some of them have a line on the back and some of them don't. Don't worry about that. That's not critical, so ignore that. But be sure that the rings are all showing, the squiggly green line is always on the top right there. Now, I'm going to just keep them stacked, and I'm going to lay them all over onto their sides so that I've got a nice little stack of all of the segments. And then I want to try to look at them and see that I don't have too many dark ones together or too many light ones together. You're going to have 6 or 7 different kinds of woods in here. Just mix them and match them, make them look nice so that it's a little bit of a variety. It makes for a nicer looking bowl if they're pretty random looking. Then I've got 16 pieces here. I'm going to break these up into 2 groups of 8. My hands are big enough to do 8. If your hands are a little bit smaller, do a group of 6 or 4s or whatever you want on there. Keep them together, keep them tight, and then I'm going to put some glue on these, and rather than put all of the segments into a ring and pick each piece up and put glue on one side or glue on both sides and doing that 16 times, if you lay them down on the side like this and put glue all on one side right here, you do all the gluing together, and it saves you a ton of time. Let me talk for a moment about the glue. Titebond glue is the best wood glue, I think, to use for segmented bowls. Titebond 2 is water resistant, and I use that on segmented pieces that I make that are like vases, things that are for show. Titebond 3, which is what this is, just in a ketchup container, Titebond 3 is waterproof, and that's really your best one to use if it's a bowl that you're going to be using, eating ice cream or soup or salad or anything like that. Just gives you a little bit of extra protection on it. So anyway, I'm just going to squeeze out some glue on each of these. Titebond 3 is a little more runny than Titebond 2 is, so be aware of your open times and how runny it may or may not be. Also have a silicone brush. That's a really nice little feature there. And I'll spread the glue out on here. It doesn't take a ton of glue, but you do want to get some good glue coverage on there. You can see that I've got that spread out. And the next thing that I'll do is assemble these into the ring. Let's get a little more glue right there. When you're gluing the rings together, I have got a nice piece of corian that I glue the rings on. The nice thing about that is I can take a wet cloth and rub it, wipe the glue off of there, or if it dries you can scrape it off and it's just fine. If you want to, you could put down some wax paper, and after each use of the wax paper, throw it away, put a new one on if you want to. Or if you've got a board, in the past I've had a board that I put packing tape on, and that also is very nice to be able to wipe off with a wet rag. We'll assemble these into the ring. So all I need to do is just start laying them down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lay them down into a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. Remember, keep that squiggly line up. If you have it down by chance, you may not get a perfect circle out of it. All right, there's my circle. You can use either hose clamps to clamp these together. I've used hose clamps for several years, but more recently I've turned to using rubber bands. I find that rubber bands do just as good a job. You don't have to have a tool to go with it. Rubber bands on and off. You can use them over and over and over again. I've got a couple of different sizes rubber bands. Some of them are thicker, wider than others, but any kind of rubber band will do. Large ones like this will of course do great big rings. I'll just fold it in half. And if your hands aren't big enough to get the rubber band over this, get somebody to help you with it. All right, on the ring here, as you put these pieces together with the glue, they're not always going to go into a perfect circle. So it's very important to be sure that these 2 points right here are together. Some of the pieces of wood are just a tad wider than others are, just a tad narrower, so don't worry about the inside. On the outside, these two are nice and smooth together. This one is not, you can see, so I'm just going to move it with my fingers. There's another one, put it together. That one looks good. That one needs to move. That one needs to move. That's good. There's another one you can see that's different. So we'll put that together. Now I've got a really nice ring. The next thing you need to be sure and do is be sure that they're all flat down onto the ground. Some of these pieces of wood are a little bit thicker than others are, so be sure that they're all the way down. Give them a nice push all the way down, and then you should be in good shape. Pick it up, turn it over, and you can look and see all of your joints are tight. And as long as it's fairly flat, you're in good shape. And if you want to, stick another rubber band on there, another 2 of them, different sizes, whatever you want to do. And that will hold them together. It will pull them into a nice circle, and then you can just set it aside to dry. You can either leave it laying down or stand them up, or I've even hung out a clamp on a chair and just let it hang just like that, and that works great.
Go ahead.
All right, all of the rings are glued together now. They'll set up in about 10 minutes with Type Bond 2 or Type Bond 3, and before I do anything with them, I really like to let them sit overnight, just to be sure that the glue is completely cured and you don't have any issue with it coming apart or anything, but that's up to you. All right, now the next very most important thing you need to know is before these rings are glued together into the shape of the bowl you're going to turn, the bottom and the top have got to be perfectly flat and parallel to each other. Well, the parallel maybe not that critical, but perfectly flat. They have to be perfectly flat on each side. So how do you do that? A couple of ways you can do that. I have a sanding disc. I used that at one time. If you have a sanding disc, this is a 12-inch disc, put that on your lathe very carefully. Hold your piece like this. The bottom of it is going to be the smoothest as it sits. The top is going to, again, have little highs and lows because the woods might be different thicknesses. But take the bottom, hold it up against the ring while the lathe is on, and sand that thing until it's nice and flat. Okay? That gets you a pretty flat face, not perfectly flat, but it gets you flat enough to where it'll work okay. The next thing that you can do, better yet, is if you have cold jaws or a Longworth chuck like this, put the piece inside of that. Again, the bottom is what I want to do. The bottom is the one without the squiggly line on it. Put that in the cold jaws or in the Longworth chuck and turn the bottom of that. I'm going to get this set up, and then we'll come back and I'll show you some interesting things or things that you want to watch about.
Go ahead.
All right, one more way that you can get these things flat if you happen to have one, and I do, is a drum sander. It's a nice piece of equipment. but not worth your investment if you're only going to be turning a few of these. If you're going to be turning a lot of segmented stuff, then you might consider getting a drum sander. Those will get it perfectly flat every time. All right, we've got this ring mounted in here. I've got the bottom out, and one of the things that you want to be sure and do is we want to get this perfectly flat here, and I'll show you a couple of really neat tricks to be able to get that nice and flat like it needs to be. Oh, whenever you're turning, don't forget to wear a face shield. Always, always wear a face shield. All right, I'm just going to scrape the end of this to get it smooth. Stop and check it. I've still got a little bit of glue lines in there, but we're pretty close with it. All right, I've got all the glue lines out of there. There are a little bit of tool marks through it, and that's okay. We'll fix those in just a minute. Let me show you here. If you'll come in, I'll show you a great trick to make sure that the bottom of this thing is flat. If you have a metal ruler, that's the best way to go, one that'll flex just a little bit. As I put this metal ruler on here, put it across the middle, and I try to move it back and forth, I can see that it's moving back and forth. It's kind of staying at one spot here where it's pivoting, and it's moving back and forth on the inside. That means that this ring here has got a little bevel on it like this. So the inside is thinner than the outside of it is, and that's not good. If you were to glue that on, you'd have a big old glue line on the inside of it. On the other hand, if it was turned outside and the inside of it here was thicker, when you put the ruler on top and move it back and forth, it would pivot from the inside right here, and you would see the ruler moving back and forth right there. So I'm just going to try to smooth that out just a little bit more, and then I'll show you the step for the final truing up of it when it's nice and flat. Just taking a little more from the outside than from the inside. I think that might do it. Put this on the top, and it's not moving back and forth on either the outside or the inside on there. So I'm just pretty darn close to being perfectly flat. But I want to get it absolutely flat as I can. So I'm going to use a sanding board. This is a piece of red oak. If you've got any kind of a board that is perfectly flat and straight, you can use that. Some people like to take a piece of sandpaper, a long thin piece of sandpaper, and glue it to the piece of wood right here. And you can do that and then hold that board up to the wood right here, and you'll see that it'll sand all of that off of there. Some people do that, and that's okay. I've found it to be just as well to take two pieces of sandpaper like this. This is 150 grit. You could use 120 grit if you want. 150 grit works real fine with me. I just take it, hold it on the outside like this. Nice thing about this is I can move it in or out just a little bit to make, a bigger or smaller circle on there. But boy, oh boy, be sure that your fingers don't come past the end of it right there, because they'll get you. So I'm going to be right here. Be about that far apart, should be good. I'm going to turn my speed down just a little bit. I was cutting at about 750 RPM. Here I'm running about 400 RPM. And I'm going to put this up against it and sand it flat. Moving my sandpaper back and forth, of course, so that I don't get a buildup in one place or another. And that looks nice and flat. You could put a pencil mark on it all the way around it, and when the pencil mark is sanded off, then you know you're in good shape. That works as well. Now I'll put my ruler back on here again. There is no movement on there, so I know right now I'm perfectly flat. All right, you'll want to do this bottom only on all four of your rings. Then what we'll do is we'll glue a ring to the base and then turn the top of that ring to get it flat, and then we'll put the next ring on and so forth. So I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. All right, I took a little shortcut and ran these through my drum sander. A little bit faster than doing each one of them one at a time, but doing them one at a time works just fine. So I've got both sides of this first ring done. This is one that we did in the Longworth chuck. And then what you would want to do is glue it to the base and then turn the top and turn it flat like we did with the Longworth chuck. Then you can glue the next one on, turn its top to get it flat, glue the next one on, and so forth. Now let me talk a little bit about the insert here, the paper that was inside of your kit bag. You'll see on this side, the spreadsheet side in column D, is the thickness of each ring. And you'll see that each ring should be about 5/8 of an inch thick, and your base about 3/4 of an inch thick to get your final product, to get it the right shape on there. So as you're turning those on the Longworth chuck or the cold jaws or your sanding or whatever it might be, you want to end up with each of these rings about 5/8 of an inch thick, okay? A little more, a little less is okay. All right, let's turn the base here. You should also have a base with your kit. It may not be inside the bag. I think we did those a little bit separately, and that's okay. Some of the pieces you'll notice have some wood that might be torn off, or the piece of wood here may not be perfectly flat, might be cut just a little bit. That's perfectly fine, okay? We're gonna turn it all down, and I'll show you that. Even with a piece like this, that's still gonna work just fine on the whole thing. All right, what I'm going to do, I'll show you a good way to get the base all set up here, is on your bad side here, this is where you want to do your cross marks, find your center point right there, and that's going to go towards the tailstock. So the good side is going to be up towards the headstock. I'm just going to bring the tailstock up and secure it against my chuck. And now I can turn that bottom piece. Referring back to our sheet here, on the back side here, the graph paper side, you'll see that this is the outline of the bowl. This is the general shape of what the bowl will look like. You should, each of the pieces will give you at least 1/4 of an inch to turn off on the inside, 1/4 of an inch to turn off on the outside, and leave about 1/4 inch thick wall. You can do a thinner wall if you want to, that's fine. This is just designed to do 1/4 of an inch. These little numbers on the left side right here correspond with what the outside diameter should be. So the outside diameter of the base here, at the top of the base where it meets the first ring, should be about 4 3/4 of an inch. Now your square bottom here is about 5 1/4 inches square. So again, you've got 1/2 inch that you could turn off and still make it work okay. We'll go over the next rings as we get to those, okay? All right, all I'm going to do is turn a tenon on the bottom of this piece of wood. I'm going to turn it round. If you want to, you could cut it out of a bandsaw first. Cut it somewhat round on a bandsaw. I'd do at least, 5 1/4 inches. That's the size of this piece of wood right here. But all I'm going to do is just turn it until it's round, and I've got all of my corners knocked off right here, okay? Again, face shield. So I got a little catch there. That's okay. If you want to, tighten that tailstock up just a little bit. Now let's get the diameter of my tenon. I've already got it pre-measured on my calipers here, so I'll just transfer that. I would suggest using some smaller jaws. This is only an 8-inch bowl. So you don't need great big giant jaws on that. Now I want to turn the tenon off of that. I'm just going to use a scraper here. Well, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll use my gouge to get it down just a little bit. Oh, face shield. Forgot the face shield. Alright, tenon doesn't need to be very deep. Again, this is an 8-inch bowl. It's already basically hollowed out. I've got a tenon here that's about 1/8 of an inch. That should be just fine. Now I'm just going to take the bottom out. You can see I've got a nice flat shoulder. That's important for the jaws to sit on. I've dovetailed the tenon so that the jaws will hold it good and tight. And now all I need to do is turn it over and put it in my chuck. All right, nice and secure in there. Now, I need to flatten this piece here as well for the same reason that we had to flatten the rings. If this is not flat, you're not going to get a good gluing surface. You're going to have a gap in there with some glue in it that you'll see, and you don't want to have that. So I need to flatten this surface right here, and I'll do that exactly the same way that I did with the rings on there. I'm just going to use a straight edge here and look. This way, that's pretty darn flat there, all the way across. I do have a little bit of tear out right here that I don't want to have my rings glued onto, because as I turn some of that away, I may see that there. So I'm going to get rid of some of that tear out on there, okay? Okay, I've got it turned flat. I didn't think that you needed to see all of that, but I do need to flatten it again with my board to be sure that it's perfectly flat. As I put my ruler up against it, I can see I don't have any gaps anywhere on it, so I'm pretty flat, but this will get it perfectly flat. So I'm going to turn the lathe on. Again, we'll run it around 500 RPM. I'm just going to do some pencil lines here, so when the pencil lines are all gone, I know I'm good. Don't need to use 2 pieces. I can just do it with 1. Like you're wrestling an alligator. I'm going to use my disc piece right here. This big and we'll get it all flat at one time. The disc here is 120 sandpaper. The other sandpaper I was using was 150. Okay, that looks good.
Okay.
All right, the bottom is all flattened. I've got my first ring, which is the smallest of the 4 rings. Otherwise you don't, that's the only way to tell really, it's the smallest of the 4. I'm just going to take that and hold it up against here. I'm going to look on the back side, see that it's about equidistant all the way around. I'll just do a little pencil line with it. And all that pencil line does is kind of give me an idea where to put the glue. There's no reason to be putting glue on the outside that's not going to be going all the way through it. So I've got a little pencil line there. I'll put some glue on the inside. There we go. Again, I'm using Type Bond 3. I left my not nylon, my silicone brush in the other room, so I'll just do this with my fingers. That works just fine. Again, I've got it a good sized daub of glue on there. Now what I'm going to do is use my tailstock and another board, and that's going to be my press. So I'm going to put it first on the base here, give it a good squeeze, move it back and forth to get the glue on both sides, get it all the way around, and then I've got a piece of wood here. I drilled a hole in the bottom that is the same size as the quill on my tailstock. Also have the center hole here so I can use with either just the quill, or I can use my center, live center on that. And then I did some lines on the inside, and I find that I don't use those lines quite as much, but the lines just kind of help me center it, you know, where I want to be. But what I'm going to do is center this on. The wood doesn't have to be perfectly centered, it just needs to be a little bit bigger than the ring. So let's take a look on this side. Let me move the light over here so you can see where we're at. And all I'm going to do is turn this now, my hand, and I'm looking across the horizon to see if I'm pretty well round, and it looks like I am. If you wanted to, you could use your tailstock. See if I can get mine over there. You can use your tailstock also to see. I'm going to use this ruler so you can see on the video right there. If I hold this ruler, maybe I can hold it steady. If I hold it steady and turn this, I can see where my high spot or low spot will be, and then I can just kind of adjust it accordingly, all right? But this one, I think I got pretty lucky, wow, to get it just exactly centered on the first try. So I've only got glue on the base and on the bottom of that ring right there. I'll tighten the tailstock up just a little bit, and we'll let that set about 10 minutes or so, and then we can do the next ring.
Go ahead.
Okay, ready for the next ring right here. You can see, I was going to mention this earlier, you can see that I just kind of randomized the way the different pieces that go on there. Just looks kind of cool that way. I also want to kind of randomize it as I put it on. I've got one Padauk piece on here, so I don't want to set a Padauk piece on top of that. I'll just move it to the side a little bit. You could go a quarter, you know, away from it, but a little bit less, a little bit more, just gives it kind of a nicer random feel to it. So I'll do the same thing as I did before. I'm just going to put this up and feel, look at it, see that it's about equidistant all the way around. I'll make a line around here, and that'll show me where my glue line needs to go to. Get some glue on this one. Man, I still forgot to go get my silicone brush. Use my finger again. That's all right. Remember when we were kids, we used to put glue on our fingers and let it dry just so we could peel it off. Younger guys won't appreciate that as much as the older guys will, but that's what we did as kids, so I do still have fun doing that once in a while. All right. I got the glue all across the surface right there. Now I'm gonna attach this ring to it, to the other ring, but the most critical thing you have to remember to do is to split them, split the pieces so that you've got a brick layer like you have on a wall, okay? If I've got a full piece right here, I want the joint of the one above it to come on top. So as I put this on, I'm going to give it a nice push, get the glue to adhere all the way around, makes it a little stiff there, and then I'm just going to take a look at the top right here. I'm going to make sure that this joint right here is right in the middle of that piece. And then I'm going to come around a quarter of the way. Make sure it's still the same thing, quarter of the way. And that will get, if I do that a quarter of the way around and do it several times, that should get my piece pretty well centered on there. I'm going to put the press tool on there, give it a little bit of pressure, and then do the same thing. Turn as before. You can't see it there, but I'm just using my tailstock, edge of my tailstock, to see if I've got a high spot or a low spot. I have a little bit of a high spot right about here. So I'm going to take that back a little bit. Just going to press down, straight down, just a little bit. Turn it again. No, I went too far. A little bit of trial and error sometimes on it. This doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Remember, we've got a quarter of an inch we're going to turn off on the outside. And that looks real good right there. So again, doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but close, because we're going to turn off about a quarter of an inch on there. So you've got a little bit of playing room, a little bit of wiggle room. But notice that I'm staggered on my joints right there. The next one that goes on, I want to stagger it so it should match this one. Every other ring will be about the same. So just kind of keep an eye on that. That's important that it looks good like that. Okay, it's all glued up together here now, so we can take it apart. All right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rings, which is the entire piece of it right there. You can see the top didn't need to be smoothed off like the other ones did, because the top is the top and we're not going to be gluing anything to it. But I do want to show you some important pieces here. So I'm going to just turn the top of this off real quick. As soon as I can find my tool. All right. All right, don't forget the face mask. Always important. All right, I'm turning about 1,000 RPM here. So I'm just going to smooth off the top of this. One of the really cool things about doing segmented turning is everything you turn is side grain. And so you get nice little shavings on everything. You can be a little aggressive, but don't be too aggressive. You know, you don't want it, pieces chipping off of it or anything like that. But it's all going to be side grain, so it's all going to be really, really cool. Okay, let me smooth this up just a little bit. All right, on the paper there, we're going to refer back to this here now. You'll be able to see that on the outside here, this 8 would be the 8 inches is the diameter of the outside of the bowl. And on down here to the next level, it's 7.5 is the diameter on the outside, 7, 6, and then at the top of the base, we're going to be about 4 3/4 in diameter. That's your guide to be able to use. I have found it's easier if I cut the inside first, if I turn the inside of the bowl first, and then turn the outside on that. So I'm going to show you what I do to be able to facilitate that. We see here that 8 inches is the outside, and if I take off 1/4 of an inch, then I need 1/4 of an inch here and 1/4 of an inch on the other side equals a total of 1/2. So I'll deduct 1/2 from that, and the outside should be 8, the inside should be about 7.5, a little less maybe. So all I'm going to do is take a ruler here, I'm going to lay it across the front, I'm going to get even on there, and that's going to be about 8 on the outside, about 7.5 on the inside. I'm going to turn a circle. That's why I smoothed the top, so I could turn this and make a circle with it. And where did my line go? There it is. All right, so you can see here I've got 2 lines. The outside is about what my outside diameter is going to be. The inside is about what the inside diameter will be. And so I'll just start cutting from the inside and cut at a bit of an angle, and down I go. As I go down there, at some point I'll be able to measure the 3rd ring or the 2nd ring, and then I can finally measure the 1st ring. And if I look again at the drawing here, this bottom here is the base. This one with the 6 is the 1st ring there. And on the inside of it, if that's 4 3/4 on the outside, using the little scale that's on the bottom right here, the inside should be just a little bit less than 4 inches. And so I can take calipers like this, and I can measure 4 inches. There's about 4. And again, a little more, a little less is okay. You can see that if I come on the inside right here, I've got to take off about that much. On the inside, that needs to go all the way down to the base, cup the base just a little bit, but I'm going to be turning about that much on the outside. After the inside of the bowl is all turned, then you can use your sandwich calipers and figure out about how wide it is going all the rest of the way down. And then the very last thing that you'll do is the base on it. And you can kind of see from the paper here about what the shape of the base would be. It's kind of a steep angle at the bottom, which is what you normally get on a bowl. a steep angle on the bottom. The straight bottom of it there would be about, it looks like 3.25 inches wide. So we'll be about 3.25 inches at the bottom there, 4 3/4 at the top there. You'll be able to shape it and feel it. Your bottom will end up being about 5/8, which is the height of all of the other rings right there. And if you'll just follow that idea, then you'll get you a nice little bowl right there. All right, I'm just gonna turn just a little bit just for fun. Look at those shavings, isn't that fun? All right, well, that's the end of the video right there. I hope that was enough information for you to be able to get your project done. It's really pretty easy. Again, a little more, a little less, doesn't hurt. There's always a little room for improvement, a little room for error on there. I hope you have a lot of fun. Be safe. Thanks a lot.